The wind of change is finally here. The church is no longer confined to a building. Step out with me as we embark on this new church normal together here at the coffee shop. Last week we talked about all this other stuff that connects to these things called the seals, and how all of the Old Testament is brought into the New Testament. Remember, the New Testament is the Old Testament revealed. Or better said, the Old Testament concealed is the New Testament revealed. It's like the curtain, pulling back the curtain. Oh, that's what that meant. So in Revelation, you find that much of what was hidden back there is revealed here. Although the fulfillment may not have happened yet, we can definitely see where it ties in and why it was prophesied back there. So those of you don't have to go to your notes from last week. If you don't have them, it doesn't matter. I just want to visit with you for a moment. As you are studying, make sure you study the Olivet Discourse from Matthew 24. We're not going to go through that now. We talked about it last week. We talked about the first seal, the second, the third, and the fourth. But we stopped because we said, the first four seals have to do with earthly things. The fifth and the sixth, they have to do with supernatural things. Things that we can't necessarily see. We can't necessarily put our finger on per se. Even though the horses are, quote unquote, supernatural, it's still tangible in a sense. A rider on a horse with a bow. And we learned that had to be a negative thing, not a positive thing. And why? There are certain words that we've pointed out so far that show us who and what was intended by the writer John. But the fifth and the sixth seal, they get pretty tough. The first seal was the white horse, second red, third black, the fourth death and the grave. But focus on the salvific purpose that we're here for in getting our family members, our friends into the kingdom, and then raising them up and preparing them for whatever time we're in. Okay? But we have to study because we know there's a blessing in Revelation for those that read this book aloud. In your notes, let's start with the fifth seal. So the first five seals, as we said, deal with earth and worldwide judgments. This is something I want to point out to you. And as we talked about the difference in the laurel wreath and the difference in the diadem, the Stephanos, meaning the laurel wreath with the white rider in the beginning, I had always been taught that was Jesus. It's not Jesus. Versus the diadem, which is the royal crown. When we see Jesus in Revelation 19, he has many crowns. He's coming to avenge the blood of his people. He's coming as a warrior. Just as we see the differences in the wording, I wanted you to think about those martyrs underneath the altar. And think about the things that you don't normally think about when you're reading. One, we'll go through them again. Oh, because I just want you to process this. I want you to think about it. Unless you spiritualize it, which you can say that's all spiritualized, it's all symbolic. But just like in Matthew 12:43, when a demon leaves, it seeks rest. It finds none. It returns. It says to itself that it'll return to its former place. So a demon, therefore, has a cognitive ability to make decisions. They don't like where they are, so they are going to find another, which means they have to have a host, right? So I'm pointing out here that the ones under the altar had a state of consciousness. That means to be absent from the bodies, to be present with the Lord. So you observe these things about those that are crying out to the Lord. When are you going to avenge? Finish what you started, Lord. Just like we talked about. Justice, Lord. Their rest. Their peace. John Huss, whenever he was martyred for his faith. Just like Paul said, to live is Christ, to die is gain. He was praising the Lord as he was burning alive. How long is actually answered later in the book. And I give you the scriptures there. We won't go there right now, just for time's sake. How long until you avenge our blood? Revelation 10:6 and Revelation 19. They're given white robes. Have you ever thought about why they're given white robes? Think about it. Why would God give white robes to those who are crying out? I want you to just, for a moment, think about this. If your loved one that's hurt, or if someone you know that needs prayer, or a baby is crying, you give them what? Something to pacify. Comfort them. Hold on. In this case, they're given white robes. Revelation 3:4. Turn there real quick. Revelation 3:4. But you have a few people in Sardis. Remember Sardis? Remember we talked about the 7 churches? But you have a few people in Sardis who have not defiled their clothes, and they will walk with me in white because they are worthy. In the same way, the one who conquers will be dressed in white clothes, and I will never erase his name from the book of life, but will acknowledge his name before my Father and before his angels. The ones who have not defiled their clothes. They're the ones who have not soiled their garments. Sixth seal. We went over the first 4. Many will argue that the bowls can be mixed in with the seals. We don't know in what order they come. As that 5th seal is opened, as I pointed out, just things to note, things to think about. as you read, think about what you're reading. The sixth seal. This is Revelation 6:12 through 11. This is starting to get real here, people. Then I saw him open the sixth seal. A violent earthquake occurred. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of hair. The entire moon became like blood. The stars of heaven fell to the earth as a fig tree drops its unripe figs when shaken by the high winds. The sky was split apart like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved from its place. Then the kings of the earth, the nobles, the generals, the rich, the powerful, and every slave and free person hid in the caves among the rocks of the mountains. Did it say anything about the Christians? Just wondering. Did it say anything? Okay, just checking. Do you know why I asked that? Well, I mean, if I listen, even as a Christian, if I'm seeing this stuff going on, I'm going to be trying to find a place to hide. Think about it. Now, if you spiritualize all of this, if you say, well, you know what, this is spiritualized, this is already happening, this is a picture of sin, you can't refute the prophecies. The prophecies that point to this quote unquote day of the Lord. Let's look at just a couple together. Okay? All right. Someone pull up Isaiah 13:10. Someone pull up Ezekiel 32, 7 through 8. Someone pull up Joel 2:10. Someone read Isaiah 13:10 for me. That's all pointing to the day of the Lord. And what is the purpose? To bring the people to repentance. To bring them finally to that place of repentance. For we know that there are those who still are rebellious and will not repent, even after seeing all these things, whether it looks just like the sun with funky looking hair on it, whatever that looks like. We've seen blood moons. How many of you witnessed the blood moons? I knew when I saw the crisscross and then saw that, I think it's 5 or 6 years later, which is coming up, that the next crisscross goes from the other side of the United States over and it crosses the New Madrid fault line. So something else is coming. Well, they say that it has been said that there will be a great earthquake that will split. It's a Mississippi, under the Mississippi, the fault line that runs under the Mississippi River. Yeah, big, big deal if that one goes. It's sayonara, half the United States. Yeah, it'll literally. I mean, some people think the San Andreas fault line is a big deal. The NUMA fault line, that's a big deal. And that's X marks the spot over the next crisscross United States blood moon occurrences. If someone wants to do a little research on that and then come back next week and tell me what you've discovered. But yeah, it really just goes the other direction. So I sure hope that something has changed before then. Seriously. I won't go into that, but that's just so much that could be said there. The day of the Lord is mentioned many times in Scripture. The day of the Lord. Now you have day, which could mean one day. And you have day, which could mean 1,000 years. Now, I won't go into the different scriptures, but you have both references the day of the Lord. In that day. That sounds like life is normal and everyone business as usual, being married and given in marriage. There's a difference there, guys. 2 Peter 3:10. We know that now think about this, Christians will not face the wrath of God. Jesus took the wrath of God in our place. So no matter where you stand on what is called the rapture, no matter where you are, whether you're pre, mid, or post, you know that by the time we get to the wrath, we're gone. Jesus took the wrath of God. In the notes that I made at the very end, we have this sixth seal. This sixth seal is violent. It is judgment. It is the end of the age, the day of the Lord. The sun turns black. This is a supernatural sign. Would you or would you not agree that when you saw the moon turn red, that it was a supernatural sign? Yes. Great judgment has fallen. I want you to look up these references that I put in here. We don't have time to go through all of this, but Jesus himself quotes the Septuagint. Does anyone know what the Septuagint is? The Septuagint was the first Greek translation of the Hebrew Holy Scriptures because of what's called, now listen to me, the diaspora. The Jews left the homeland. They were Hellenistic. They were speaking Greek. They didn't even know their native language. Their Hebraic roots were all over the place. Remember when we talked about what Hellenism means? We were watching, I think Doug had fallen asleep, but John Adams had gone. I didn't realize that the forefathers went to Paris. They went to France, and they were begging for money. And it shows him going over there, and he's shocked at what he sees, because he sees all of this fornication and debauchery just out in the open. And he walks in and sees like the queen in the bathtub with Benjamin Franklin, and he was just really, he was, because he was a legalist, it was by the book. And so he walks in and he sees this, and not understanding that Benjamin Franklin was trying to, really nurture her to get his way. And in France, that's what had to happen. You couldn't just go in and ask for the millions of dollars that you needed for war. You had to fancy your way into their presence, participate in their culture, and then ask. Jesus quotes, and I find this interesting because at that point, this is the first written Bible that the Israelites had. Septuagint. Jesus quotes from this book, which also contains the Apocrypha. It is in Greek. So now, even though it has, and it's so little, even though it has English, this version that I have does, it has the Greek and the English both. So the English is in little tiny words on the side, and the Greek is in larger letters on the other side. I don't know if you can see from here. What's that? Greek, right. So remember I said the Hebrews, they spoke Hebrew. Okay? But they had forgotten their language because they had been mixed in with the Greeks for so long. So, during that time, when they were spread out in Greece, and they became Hellenized, meaning that they had become very inundated and acclimated to the culture in Greece. Do you remember me telling you Sunday? I just want to point this out, sidebar, because this is the exact same thing. Do you remember me saying that the reason why the Israelites had to be taught again how to worship God when they came out of the wilderness was because the ways of Egypt had really gotten into them? It wasn't that all of a sudden the law was given. It wasn't because the sacrificial giving system was all of a sudden given after Moses came down from Mount Sinai. People look at it as the Old and New Testament. There's 7 covenants, right? So Cain and Abel gave the first offering that's recorded, but there was a system already in place of giving. Okay, you come out of Egypt into the promised land, and it takes 40 years instead of 11 days, which is what the journey could have been, but because they were stubborn, they complained and they demanded their way, it took 40 years. So when they came out, God had to teach them again. And that's why in those first 5 books called the law, or in Hebrew, the Torah, that's teaching these guys how to worship God again, because they had forgotten. So in the Septuagint, what had happened is those that had become more like the Gentiles in Greece. They had been Hellenized. Kind of like John Adams that goes over to Paris and he's like, oh, culture shock. But then he gets used to it after a while. And next thing you know, he's wearing the fancy wigs and the makeup and everything else. The funky lipstick. Right? So that's what had happened here. God's people had been Hellenized. So they didn't know the word. So Jesus here is quoting from this translation, which is the earliest recorded, written translation we have, Septuagint. And you find the English and Greek in this book. I bought this my second year of seminary and started studying it, and it just, I don't know, I love having different translations, being able to look at various ones. I always pick at the King James, but it's such a poetic, beautiful translation of the Bible. And there are many that have different words here and there. But as I told you, when you're translating, remember I gave you Biblia and I gave you Rev Bible. I don't think I gave you that one last week, but revbible.org. A whole lot of stuff there that you can find. A lot of interesting information about translating. But translate from the original language to the English, not English backward. What I have found with a lot of people that mistranslate, especially one of the main scriptures that's mistranslated is 3 John. The intro to 3 John, when it's really an introduction. I pray that you prosper and you're in good health. Some people have made an entire doctrine out of that. It was just like a salutation. Hey, how you doing? Hope you're doing well. Hope God's treating you good. That's what it was. But people use it in doctrine. And that's because they take English and translate backwards. A lot of people. In your translation, go from the original to the English. Let's end here. I thought about stopping and going back through Daniel's prophecies, but I'm going to leave that to you. If I do that and I take a week to go through that, a lot of you are going to get lost because there are a lot of you that are only coming on Wednesdays and you're listening and you're not doing your studies at home. And so if I spend 10 to 15 hours preparing these teachings and maybe not even a quarter of you care, then it's not worth it. I'm just being honest with you. It takes a lot of time to do this. So I'm going to put the material out there for you so that you can print it and study it. Does that make sense? It's not that I don't want to do it for you. It's already done, really. But to incorporate it in a simplified manner, there's a lot to it. I encourage you to go to Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9. Okay? We cannot divorce or detach the prophetic drawings of Daniel's prophecies from this point forward. Daniel was writing about the time of the end. Early Christians and Jews understood the time of the end to be, and this comes from Daniel, a threefold process. They also thought it was imminent because imminence, or in layman's terms, quickly. They thought it was quickly. This is going to come quickly. But so did Daniel, except for that which was sealed up for the time of the end. Understand that Daniel was writing, and this is where a lot of prophets today, you may get a vision or a dream that doesn't take place for many, many, many years. I know you laugh at Mike, because I'm like, yeah, say aye. But the early Christians and Jews understood the time of the end to be a threefold process, meaning 3.5 years, 3.5 years. Treaty in the middle, that's broken. The abomination, the Antichrist, all of that. Remember, we talked a little bit about that before. Go back, put your, what I suggest that you do, like when you're studying, because you can get lost real quick in this. Okay? Let's say you just come in, like this is your first week. Go back to the website, print week 1. Read the first chapter with week 1. Then go to week 2. Don't print them all out at the same time. If you don't know what view you hold, then look at the different viewpoints. Has it already happened? Is it happening now? Is it spiritualized? Or is it something that is coming? But don't overwhelm yourself. I remember when I used to study the Bible in the beginning, I had stuff spread out everywhere. And I'd get frustrated, and I'd wind up like reading a devotional. And then I just go to the scripture in the devotional because I just had too much stuff at once. Make it easy, okay? Make it simple. Start with a couple lines here, a couple lines there. You know, I always tell you that, okay? Don't go buy a Septuagint, and the next thing you know, you're back in the Apocrypha, and you're trying to figure out what this means and that means. First Maccabees, second Maccabees. Oh, that's where that came from. Don't do that. Yeah, you'll really get down the rabbit hole fast. They don't know. No. Remember, the word is alive and powerful. So you want to absorb every bit of it. Okay, so the early Christians, they had a different viewpoint, but it evolved. They grew, they learned. Just like you may have grown up in a church where you heard Jesus was coming back any day. And he still hasn't. Some people, that really got under their skin. So they sought to find the answer, the real answer. Some people realized that they were in churches where they just heard a lot of hooping and hollering and they really didn't grow a whole lot. Although John's writing refers back to Daniel 7 through 12, the early Jews and Christians understood the end of days to be a threefold process. You need to understand that. Beginning with the tribulation, which would last 3.5 years, followed by God's judgment on the nations of the world. John alludes to a threefold perspective from Daniel. They intersect. Daniel's revelations seem to be at hand or imminent, meaning they could happen anytime. Daniel's and John's seem like they could happen anytime. I'll end there. I gave you a lot of substance, even though we just finished the 6th chapter. Chapter 7 is like an interlude. It's like the intermission during the play. And I want you to come back next week and tell me who the 144,000 are. Who is it? Male versions. All right. Everyone has a different view on who the 144 are. To me, I don't mean to sound dismissive, but I don't really care. I'm not going to bat back and forth about it because I look at it as prepare, prepare, prepare. Be prepared, be prepared. Have enough oil in the lamp. Make sure my wick is lit. Get it? Be ready at all times. Okay, so we'll stop there. Now, in your studies, you may pull in other teachings. You'll find that everyone has a slant. Everyone has a bend. Everyone has a perspective from which they are writing. And when you start listening to someone, be careful because you can wind up on a Jehovah's Witness site real quick. You can wind up on a Mormon article real quick and not know it. And it's that, yes, especially the Seventh-day Adventist. Yes. Just different, it's different, the cults of Christianity. They consider themselves Christians, but when you're reading things online or you're listening to videos, let's say you go to YouTube and you type in, who are the 144,000? You're going to get a lot of Jehovah's Witness information. And there's one teacher in particular that I listened to him. It was like my freshman year of seminary, and I listened to him, and he sounded so good. And then I realized that he was a witness. It was the Jehovah's Witness. It's like, oh boy, I got fooled. Did you know that the term hoodwinked, you know where that came from? How many of you have ever used that phrase? Hoodwinked? All right. Let me tell you where it came from. But no, seriously, there are certain phrases that I never knew what they meant. And I would say them. And I won't say all of them, but the term hoodwinked, it comes from Freemasonry. It's something they have to go through in their initiation process. They have to be hoodwinked. Kind of. Yeah, it's a ritual. Yeah, it's a ritual. So we throw these things around not realizing where they originated. Yeah, there's a lot of other things too as well. But anyway, we'll end there. That prophecy of Daniel and the 70 weeks online, just read through it. Go through Daniel 7 through 12 for next week. And look at the 144,000. There's so many perspectives as far as who they are. I think, can I tell you something that's just Paige conjecture, and we'll close. I think I've said this before, but I want to remind you. I think we are coming to a time. I want you to notice there's been all of this over the past 3 years. Trump's coming back. There's this plan. Everybody's, looking for this and that. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. 10 days of darkness. All this stuff still hasn't happened. What you're seeing is a great separation occur. You're seeing those that belong to him, those that don't, those that say they do but don't. We talked about how exposing was going to occur. Exposure, that which it was behind the scenes. So this is a time of exposure. I believe we are coming to another Mount Carmel moment. And remember when I made those videos and the Lord said, make these videos and say this, and this. I believe we are coming to another crescendo. Those, and what made me think of it was the 144,000. Those who have not bowed the knee to Baal. Those who have not caved and said, you know what, but I like the 501c3. I'm just using that as a hypothetical. This is comfortable over here. This is not comfortable. But I like it this way. I don't want to change. Or those that say, I'm just going to act like I didn't hear that, because if I hear that, I'm accountable for it. The sacrifices that were offered to Baal, it's the same sacrifices the church offers today. Religious power, religious enslavement, religious captivity. You offer up your soul for that money, power, prestige, greed, all of that stuff. The offerings to Baal, the church as a whole, has been doing that for quite a while. Once your eyes are open, though, they're opened. Doug's mom was at the house over the weekend. You guys got to meet with her. And they were talking about the Matrix again. And we were talking about the fact that once you know, you know. You can't unknow, can't unsee it. So what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? What if your whole family, they're against you? Like when it was time to get the shots, and you're like, I'm not doing that. If the government's telling me to do it, there's no way I'm going to do it. But everybody around you, I remember being on the plane with Doug, and the stewardess are coming up, like the people that get a little bit of power. The stewardess are coming up, and they're saying, cover your face, cover your nose, cover your mouth. If you do it again, you're going to get a spanking. Right? They got a little bit of power. And they were just looking to see who was actually breathing. Right? Anyway, that, I think, as we saw those that had a little power, what they did with it, we're seeing now the separation. We're seeing people for who they are, for what's inside of them. And when the pressure's really on, we're going to see how much faith you really have. In the dark night of the soul, we're going to see who bends the knee to Baal. That's what's happening right now. Think about it. It's exposure. It's the sheep from the goats. We're seeing that. I had a dream years ago about these neighborhood children, and they were older, but one of them, he went to church with his mom, and I could see the potential in him, and the other one was just one of those kids that you think either he's going to be a Harvard law professor or he's going to live on the street and be in a gang. Like there's no in between for this kid. Well, I had a dream, and I saw the one that I thought had a lot of potential. He was a little lamb in the dream. And then the other kid was a goat, solid black goat with white spots, meaning he had potential. And I knew what in the dream what it meant. And so in the dream, the one little lamb goes and he jumps over the fence, and he's on the other side with the rest of the sheep in the pasture. And that goat, he runs, and he just can't ever get over the fence. Can't ever get over the fence. And there's some Christians that they'll just never, they'll never get over that hump. So I think we're coming to that crescendo of the separation. We're coming to another Carmel experience where God says, hang on, I've got these over here that haven't bent the knee to Baal. Hang on. Just hang on. You're not there yet, but you're going through what you're going through because I'm testing what you think you have, that really when it gets down to the bottom of the barrel, the faith needs to be sharpened a little more. While we're bringing these others in, just like the martyrs under the altar. When will you avenge us? We're saying now, when, God, when? We're ready, we're ready. God's saying, hang on, I got more that are coming. You see? Let's close in prayer. God, I thank you right now for everyone here. I thank you. Those that have chosen to come out, those that were online tonight. This is tough material. There's a lot of stuff in here, Lord, and a lot of it we do not know how to explain other than what you have given us. I just ask, Lord, that everyone that is under the sound of my voice right now would be prepared. That you would give them a fire and passion, God. Oh, that's all I ask. You told me, Lord, ask them what they want. I'm asking you what I want. I want fire coming from each one. I want to see infernos walking in here. I want to see them so full of your word that they are blowing me away with the knowledge that you've given them, the revelation that you've given them over the night, the words that you've spoken to them, Lord, the dreams that you've given them, Lord. I can't wait to see the mantles burst forth. God, I can't wait to see the balm of Gilead that's been prophesied. Lord, show us those things where it says, reader, pay attention. I ask you to give us the eyes to see and the ears to hear, to know what the Spirit is saying to the churches. I ask, Lord, for those that turn a blind eye, Lord, give them a second chance. God, bring the others in that don't know they're supposed to be here. They're wandering around and they don't know. And like John said earlier, protect this place. For she is consecrated unto you, and that she will remain. Lord, we offered our lives to you, and I believe that everyone here has too. But if there's anyone here that doesn't know you the way that they could, Doug and I stand in intercession. The deacons and the elder now stand in intercession for everyone that will hear this message. God, let them be prepared. That's it. We love you. I plead the blood of Jesus over each and every one of us and our homes, God.
Hello, and welcome to the coffee shop. My name is Paige Coffey. Thank you for joining me today. I have a quick word from the Lord. This came from two specific dreams. They're warning dreams, and I want to share them with you today. There were two very specific dreams that I had relatively close together about Bank of America. I don't know how many of you out there bank with Bank of America, but let this be a warning. There will be a time, I don't know when, I don't know if it's in a month or a year, I have no idea, and we know not to set dates, but Bank of America will go under. In the first dream, I saw the financial centers closing. I knew that there was a great economic impact on this institution. I didn't know that Bank of America corporate would go asunder. But in the second dream, if any of you know where the headquarters of Bank of America is located. It's in Charlotte, North Carolina, close to where I'm from. I was at the headquarters in Charlotte, way up high in the building, one of the highest places in the building, looking out, and suddenly, almost like a controlled demolition, the building began to collapse, like the World Trade Center just collapsed. It was like a controlled demolition, like the World Trade Center. Bank of America collapsed. So this is a warning to all of those who have money at Bank of America. Move it. If you research the founders, the owners, the ones pulling the purse strings, there's a lot of evil behind this institution. And they were also a part of, let's just say, a lot of evil that happened January 6th. They handed over account information. We don't want to be a part of that. As the remnant, we absolutely want to back away from those who serve evil. And even though there may be a convenient location by you, it's just so much easier. You can use their app, you can use Zelle, whatever it is that makes it easier to be a part of this institution. God will provide something greater. Move your money, close your accounts. It's like the school boards saying, we are not going to subscribe to what you're doing to our children. Those who are standing up, and they're standing up on the side of righteousness. They are standing up and doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. This institution is backed by the very ones who want you out of the picture. You and I, all of us. They are a part of the agenda. So without going much further with that, you know what I mean by the agenda. So if you have an account with Bank of America, let this be a warning. I don't know when they'll close. I don't know how it's going to come about, but I know that some of the institutions have already closed their doors. They've changed their hours. They've cut back on staff. Even making an appointment these days is very difficult because the financial centers are understaffed. Don't subscribe to evil. Let's remove ourselves from those who have an agenda that is against God's agenda. I just wanted to pop on and share that word with you, and hopefully you will heed the warning. Get away from that evil cistern. There are many of those these days. We have to come out of the machine. God spoke to me in 2018 and asked me if I was in a machine, and told me that I needed to come out of its systems. I didn't know at the time what that meant, but I do now. And I'll talk to you more about that later. But this video is just going to be short. I wanted to share what God had said to me and make sure that there was that emphasis to you.
The Lord leads you step by step if you concede to His will and His will alone. Everyone gets to that place where they're confused. They've been to the brook. They've been fed by the ravens day and night. Remember, it was a brook. It wasn't a river. It was a brook. Elijah was fed when there was no rain. But he went through that period of preparation from place to place to place. And he waited for the Lord's sign. It's time to go. I want you to remember something. If you're in a season, depending where you are, in every place, you'll have your sweet spot where it's a little comfortable. You feel pretty good. And then the Lord moves you out from that place. But you wait on Him to move. God empties us of the scum. He lets it rise to the top so the slag can be removed. And it is through our circumstances that we see how much faith we really have. That we see how much confidence in God's leading we really have. We get lethargic, we get lazy, we get sloppy in certain places. We get comfortable, and then he says it's time to move. He empties our vessel so he can refill it. And when we get to that place where it's absolutely empty and we're reaching and we're reaching and we're reaching and we have done all that we can do, then you know that God's getting ready to move in your circumstance. Because we're not looking at that which we see, we're looking at that which we cannot see. But just remember, man plans his way. God establishes his steps. You can make your plans all day long, but if God is not in that, if it's not him, if he didn't tell you to do it, he'll clean up the mess that you made. Yes, he will. And he will not bless anyone that regards iniquity in your heart. Remember that. When Elijah was at the brook, he was supernaturally fed. He then was moved to Zarephath, but he implicitly trusted the Lord. Why did he go through all of that which he did? Because out here he was facing the prophets of Baal as the one and only. Now the Lord said, I have others who haven't bowed the knee, but you're going up against these four, in some translations it's 400, in some it's 450. You're going up against the prophets of Baal, and you're going to need to know that you know that you know I will not fail you in that 23rd and 3/4 hour. When you get tired of provision in a place, it's manna, it's every day, and he doesn't let you store up for that next day. Don't worry about it. He's got provision for the next day, and he's going to lead you where you need to be. I had somebody call. She said, I think I need to be at NUMA. I think I need to be at NUMA. My heart was full because I knew that was her assurance. God was saying, come here. They're going to help you.
Thank you so much for joining us today on The Coffee Shop. This is a new show, so you may not know that we will air each week on Access 21, Mondays at 1 p.m. and 10 p.m. So if you miss the 1 p.m. slot, surely you can catch us at 10 p.m. And if you would like prayer, we would love to pray with you. The number's at the bottom of your screen right now. Feel free to reach out. So many are hurting these days. So many are in need of deliverance, prayer, healing, and we want to stand with you. It's like God said, you have not because you ask not. I want to thank you for joining me today. I look forward to building that relationship each week. God bless you.